So After Effects. We'll start with taking a look at text because that is going to be the most kind of comprehensive thing we'll be looking at this week. And then we'll go on to the Puppet tool and the masking. So here we go. I'll create a new project, new composition, and call it text demo. There we go. All right. So I've got my composition all sorted out. This should be familiar to you guys. There you go. Okay. So now, if I'm going to go back up to default just to show you guys, if you've been working in After Effects, if you haven't changed your windows at all, you'll probably be in default, which looks like this. And it's pretty similar to what we'll be working in. But when you're working in text, you'll need to toggle between this paragraph section over here and, having a line set up is helpful as well. But paragraph is mostly what you'll be working in, and character. Now, if you'll notice, once I click on one, I can't see the other. So that's kind of a pain. And I mean, one thing you can do is grab this, do that. Um, Grab this kind of handle or this kind of top bar, and you can toggle them around different places like that so you can have them open. Put it back in here. Another thing you can do, and so I can, switch all these things. Another thing you can do is click on these double arrows right here and go to text. And that will just open up a new kind of window that's primarily made for working with text. This really won't look that much different than default if that's what you've been using. Now, if you've gone through and changed your default window to kind of more of your custom preferences, then toggling to text might make it a little easier when you're working in here. But it's really preference. Just know that character and paragraph are going to be really helpful to be working with when you're working with text. And it's good to have those open and available at your leisure. So just like text in Illustrator and Photoshop, if we go up to our tools and select this little T icon, horizontal type tool, if I open this up, I can do vertical as well. Chances are you'll probably want horizontal, but if there's something you're wanting text kind of scrolling down, so something like this. If that's something that you want, then that's something that is available in After Effects. But I'm going to work with horizontal. And if you toggle over it, it'll say Control T is the shortcut. So if I type in here or just click in my scene view or my stage, I'll get my little arrow. And if I start typing chicken nuggets, they're always on the brain. There we go. So you can type in words. Now, if I hit my selection tool up here, so usually I can hit V, but if I'm typing and if I hit V, I'm going to actually type V. V is my shortcut for the selection tool. I have to go up here and select it. And now I can drag and drop this around as I feel necessary. Now, if you look here in this object on the scene view, you'll notice that my little pivot point is not exactly in the center. And, that's fine, but I personally like it in the center. So I'm going to get my pan behind or my anchor point tool. Which again, the shortcut for that is Y. And I just drag it up a little bit. And I'm eyeballing it. But if I hold Shift, I can keep it oriented just straight up and down. And I think that's about right. And just to make sure that I have it close to center, what I can do is toggle down and hit my transform. And I have anchor point and position right here. So my X value is 0, 0, which is right. That's where I want it. And my Y is negative 38. So if I just hit this, I can toggle it around. You'll see that it doesn't really change my anchor point position. It changes my text position. So it orients this anchor point to where the text is. I mean, just kind of eyeball it. Oh, negative 38. Another thing I can do is make sure my paragraph is set up to the center. And if I hit left or right oriented or text aligned, you'll see that it uses that pivot point or that anchor point to orient my text. So if I move this thing, right over here, then I'm getting some weird kind of orientation things. So that's why I like to try and keep it about center. And I'll change this to 0. And we'll see what 0, 0 looks like on my anchor point. That puts it right about in the middle, and that moves my position down for my text itself. So I'm going to select V for my V tool and hit on here. And what I can do, see, I don't have my alignment anymore. So what I can do, toggle up here, or actually maybe window, and look for align. And now I can get my align tool. And now I can center all of this, and that centers my actual text. There we go. I'm not crazy about that. I'm just being kind of a bit picky. There we go. All right. With my selection tool selected now. So one thing you might notice is unlike images, unlike video, unlike audio, the text element that you create in your composition stays within your composition. I'm not bringing in any videos or images or audio in here in my library or my project library. So the text stays within this composition, my text demo comp. That's just one thing to kind of be aware of. You'll also notice down here on my timeline, I have this little T icon, and that's just signifying that this is a text element in my layers. So as you might have noticed so far, everything that you put into your timeline has a unique kind of icon right here to the left of the name. And that just signifies, what it is. A shape layer has a star. If you're bringing things over from Illustrator, they will have a little Photoshop or Illustrator icon. Videos have a little kind of still frame icon. Images have, I think, a little landscape picture, and audio has some sort of audio element. That's just something that you'll want to pay attention to, just to kind of denote, what you have selected. So if I toggle down my layer again, you'll see that I have text and transform. So transform should look familiar. Everything that you import into your timeline will have a transform, and we've kind of covered that already. Not really anything worth looking at in here that's new. Just realize that just like an image or a video, your text has a transform as well, and that adjusts the whole object and not individual letters. So if I change my scale, it's just going to scale up the whole kind of bounding box of my text and not the individual text itself. Same thing with my opacity, and same thing with my rotation. See, it's rotating this whole string of text as a kind of box and not as individual text elements. Now, if I toggle down this text, which is new for our text, you'll see that I have source text, path options, and more options. And you'll also notice at the end of this kind of text line, I have this thing called animate over here with a little playhead. Cover that in a second. So if I open up my path, you'll see that it just has none right now. If I open up my more options, here we go. I have anchor point grouping, and that's to character. You can change that per word, line, or all. And you'll notice I have these little kind of X's right here. I zoom in, you still can't really see them. These are my little anchor points per letter, or this is showing me, each kind of character that I have, and it includes spaces as well. Group alignment, if I toggle this, I can now see, move those little points. And I can change their X offset as well. So you'll see that these kind of start slowing in and catching up with each other. And then fill and stroke, per character palette, all fills over all strokes over all fills. We aren't really going to be playing with this stuff too much, but I just want to show you that there are other options within this text. So one thing you can do is add several effects in here, right? One way to do this is in your effects and preset, and I'm just going to type in dissolve. I know that is a transition, not one in particular that I'm looking for. We'll try block dissolve digital. Go. And just like our regular layers and things like that, it adds an effect down here underneath our layer. If I toggle that down, I can see which effects that I have. Click on my block dissolve, open that up, and I'll see the same window that I have up here in my effects control. You'll see that I get this kind of weird thing. It already sets it up, and it puts a keyframe, 2 keyframes in here. And so remember, if I hit J and K, well, I'm wanting to do it. Let's see. Yeah. What is it? Oh. There we go. So I have transition completion right here. And so that, there we go. So when I have this open now, J and K toggle through, keyframe to keyframe. Now if I pull this out and scrub through here, you can see this is kind of my block transition, right? But notice that this only affects, again, just like working with my transform, this affects my layer as a whole and not just individual kind of characters or spaces or things like that. So in order to kind of give myself a little bit more granular adjustment, what I can do, and I'll delete these effects just all together, and I toggle down this text, and I'll go to animate and hit this little play button. And now it's asking me what I want to animate individually. So again, some of these things like anchor point, position, scale, skew, rotation, opacity, all transform properties, these are transform properties. So I can adjust these in my transform tab down here. But if I want these more text-based, meaning influencing individual letters, individual characters, spaces, numbers, things like that in my text or different lines of text, what I'll do is come over here. I can also do fill color, stroke width, tracking, line anchor, and a couple other different values. So what I'm going to do for now, though, is I'm going to go with scale. So if I select scale from this animate option in my text, it will open up this, it will create an animator 1. And if I toggle that down, which it should toggle down automatically, it will show me 2 things. One is my range selector, which is toggled up, and one is my scale, or whatever property I have adjusted or selected for this animate. Now, if I toggle down this range selector, it will give me a start, end, offset, and advanced. So this start and end are going to be what's controlling my animation or my effects for this animator. And I'll start here. I'm going to pull all the way to the very beginning of my timeline, and I'm going to toggle this start. But what I want to show you guys is you'll notice there's a line right here and a line right here at the end. So beginning and end. This applies to my start in my range selector. And if I scrub through here, you'll see that it's selecting that little line and pushing it towards the end. And you'll also notice that as I kind of change between my percentage, it's actually showing me which characters I have selected. So it's not going between these characters. It's not going right in the middle of E. It's going right after or right before. So this is where I can go in and adjust individual characters, spaces, letters, numbers, and that kind of thing in my text. So 0% is at the very beginning, 100% is at the very end. So you'll see that this start is at 0%, meaning here's my start, and the end is at 100% right here. So this is my end bar on the right, and if I toggle here between my percentages, I can adjust these things. So let's say I want to have each individual letter kind of spring up in scale, and I want that to run straight across. Now, there's a couple different ways I can do that. If I start by keeping my end at 100 and my start at 0, and then I change my scale, you'll see that it's going to adjust everything. And things are getting squeezed in together. And you'll notice too that it's actually adjusting scale for each individual letter and not the whole layer. So that is where the difference between animating text with an animator and animating your transforms start to kind of delineate. So I'll change this back to 100. And actually, I'll maybe go with a 120, a little bit bigger. Now, this is great, but again, I don't want every single letter to be scaled up at once. So what I will do, again, I'm still at the very first frame. I'm going to choose my end state, and I'm going to drop it down to my first letter. There we go. So that's 4%, and that's just a matter of kind of eyeballing it. So now if I adjust this scale, it's only scaling up what I have selected between my start and end in my range. So my range right now is only this first letter. And you'll see that if I scale it up to like 600%, that it's only that first C. Now again, maybe I'll do 150 just to make it a little more extreme. All right, so now let's say I want to animate this kind of running across. What I'll do is kind of go out maybe 2 seconds or so. And then I will change my end to 100%. And I'll change my start, and I'm going to do this by hand and toggle it right over here. There we go. It's about 95. We'll try 94, see what that looks like. All right, and then we'll try 93. Now see, I've already got part of that T, so I'm just going to put it back to 94. Is there a way to center the anchor point automatically? I'm sure there is, Abraham, and I am just not certain off the top of my head. I'm sure it's a Google search away, though. Let's see. All right. After Effects. Layer, transform, and center anchor point. Let's see what that looks like. There we go. A little late, Abraham, but I hope that answers your question. Okay, so now I have my last frame set up for my highlighted S, and I started with my highlighted C. Let's play through this. I'm actually going to put it in, go to my last keyframe and hit N, because remember that adjusts my little play space or my work area. So let's play through here and see what this looks like. There we go. So now I'm starting to animate this text. Well, let's say, okay, this is great. This is really fun and lovely. Maybe I want to change the color. Maybe I want to highlight each letter as it goes through here. What I can do with this animator selected up here, I can go to this little tab that says Add with the play button, and I can toggle this play button. I can select Property, and now I can change fill color. And I will do RGB. And now, right here, underneath, like nested within my Animator 1, I have a fill color that I can select. And if you notice up here on my scene view or my stage, my C is now highlighted in red. And everything that's in my range will be red. Maybe I want it to be blue. I can adjust that, maybe a tealish, make it stand out a little bit more, a little brighter. Okay, so now if I play through, each one of those letters is highlighting this kind of fill color. So once you get some sort of like range set up in your basic animation, you can always add in different properties within this animator. One thing I do want to show is right when it gets between this lowercase n and this capital N, there's like a pause, and it's filling in for this space right here, this actual space. And so if I get out of here and let's see. There we go. If I select in here, go down to my more options and just hit anchor point grouping just to show you. There is this little X, and that's showing me that, hey, there is something right here. It might not be visible, it's just a space, but there is a character that is being considered whenever you're adding in these ranges and different things like that. One thing you can do to adjust that inside your animator, so let's say I just want my letters being highlighted. I don't want spaces highlighted. What I'll do is in my animator, I'll go down to advanced. And let's see, you can select based on. You'll see characters. If I toggle down, I have a few options. One is characters, and that's selected by default. Then we have characters excluding spaces. We have words and lines. So if I select words, let's see what this looks like. Nothing, not really changing anything, right? Now, if I go to, I hit lines, words. Let's see what words does. Not much either. See, it's highlighting just my words now, and it's changed kind of the structure of my animation. And for some reason, my fill color isn't even working anymore. That's okay. And then characters excluding spaces. So now if I go back, this should look more normal to what I was doing. But you'll see now I'm getting this weird kind of transition here because it's not counting that space. And so just scrubbing through here, I see spaces where I'm getting 2 letters. So what I'll need to do right now, between start and end, I have 4%, so maybe we'll dial it down to 3% and see what that looks like. I think that looks better. I think I'm getting individual words now. Well, there's a little bit of a transition in places like right there. Let's see. That's still 4%, and I know why that was. So in the beginning right here, I selected 0 and 3, so there's a 3% difference. But at the end, at K, there's a 6% difference. So we'll do 97. All right, there we go. So now I'm highlighting individual letters. And there's a little bit of a transition, but it's not as extreme. Okay, so now let's say, all right, well, you can play with these range selectors as well. Maybe I don't want to highlight it all the way across. Maybe instead, I'll undo these keyframes. Maybe I want my range selecting, my range to meet in the middle. I'm gonna go back to 100%. Give me 1 second. I think my rabbit's going crazy. Sorry about that. My rabbit was going wild. Okay, where were we? Let's see. Chicken nuggets. Yes. So let's say I want this highlighted area to kind of meet in the middle or diverge from the middle. So as of right now, I have my start at 0% and my end at 100%. That means my range is everything. So every element in here is going to have this increased scale and this fill color. What I'll do is start my start at 50% and my end at 50%. And I'll create keyframes here. And then towards the end, where I want my animation to be, right at about, let's say 2 seconds, I'll create 2 more keyframes. And my start will be 0, and my end will be 100. So now, if I scrub through here, or play through, it starts from the center and goes out. Now, this isn't quite as pretty, but it's another way, or a different way of kind of animating using these ranges. What I'm going to do is actually change this back to the original way I had it. So 0, 3, then I think 7, I think. There we go. So you'll notice too that with this percentage, I don't get the full effect of that full scale and full color. But the look of it, the animation style looks a little crisper and cleaner. And so these are always about 3 frames or 3% apart. Okay, so now let's see, I've added 2 different properties in here, and I could go in and add an opacity, but that's going to change, what this looks like on the inside, and I want to be able to see this. What I can do now is create a second animator that works independently of this animator. So for this animator, my range is only going to be about a 3% at any one point in time, and it's going to be an increase in scale and a change in fill color. Now, let's say I want to add in another range or another animator that eliminates everything that's not highlighted. Or let's say, eliminates everything until it's highlighted with my animator 1, with my scale and fill, and then creates, opacity, cleared out text until this highlight covers everything, and then it will fill it in. I know that's kind of confusing, but I'll show you guys. So what I'm going to do is select my text in my layer, and that's important because if you don't have that selected and you hit animate, oh, well, it will create an animator. Never mind. Just make sure you have your text selected, though, especially once you start building up layers. It will make it a little easier. So again, I'm going to hit animate for my text, my kind of top-down text. I'm going to hit opacity, and then you'll see it creates an animator 2. And I have the same thing. I have a range selector and an opacity. So this is the trait that I want to adjust. So now if I toggle down my range selector, I'll see that just like my first animator, my start and end, my start is at 0%, my end is, that means it highlights everything and it's selecting everything. So if I change my opacity, you'll see that it starts to disappear. So what I want to do is I want to start off with a 0 opacity, but I want to get my keyframe selected first. What I want to do is whenever this highlighted and increased font size or increased scale passes over something, I want that opacity to be visible now. I want it to be at 100%. So everything behind this letter, so the CHI, that will be exposed. Everything ahead of this highlighted or this increased scale and colored letter will be invisible. So what I'm going to do is start with my end position at 0, and I'm going to create 2 keyframes. And notice that I'm at the very beginning of my timeline. I'm going to select my opacity of 0. Actually, Yeah, I think that's right. Let's see. We'll play around with it. Put it back at 100 now. Okay. So now, by the time it gets right here to my end keyframe, and I'm using my, and actually, what might be best if I just hit U, because remember, U will open up everything that you have keyframed so far. And actually, that doesn't help me with my opacity. Let's see. I'm gonna hit U again and U one more time, so it will open up everything. I don't need that transform open. Yep. Okay. So I'm going to select right up here and just hit K. There we go. And select my last keyframe. And I'm going to create a keyframe right here for my end state in my animator 2, which controls my opacity. And I'm going to change that to 100. So now, as it goes along, I'm getting this kind of negative visibility, right? That's not quite what I want. If I change my opacity to 100, then this won't really change anything, right? So what I want to do, let's see, what would be the best way to do this? Maybe I want to start with, okay.
Does reversing keyframes help?
Reversing keyframes?
Yeah,
How so? What do you mean?
like, you know, I know it's getting erased, but you want them to get like shown by moving, right?
Yeah.
So just select into keyframes and just right click. And I guess it's in the keyframe assistant. You can just reverse them, just flips everything the other way. Yep,
Like time
should be
reverse?
that one. Yep, I guess.
That's just going to bring it back. I think.
Oh,
Do what?
I guess the opacity should be 0.
Yeah, it's only going to do what's in this range, and so I'm trying to think of how to kind of organize it so that everything outside of this range will not be adjusted. So my opacity, whether it's 0 or 100, everything outside of my opacity range will still be visible. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out. I'm thinking I need to keep my range. I think I might need to move my start range instead. And so what I'm going to do is pull back to the beginning and create new keyframes. And my opacity is going to be 0 here. And so what I want to do is actually maybe put this up to 3. And that will kind of cover my C. 4. Maybe 5. There we go. And so right here, well, towards the end, I'll create a new start keyframe, and that will be 100. All right. So there we go. A little confused with the kind of organization. All right. So just to explain this again, what I'm doing now in my second animator, remember this is opacity. And remember, like I was just saying, anything outside of your range or your range selector will not be affected by anything that you have in here. So it won't be affected by any of my opacity. So if I toggle this between 0 and 100, the chicken and the capital N is outside of my range for opacity, so it's not going to be affected at all. It's only affected by my transform for my text. So remember, if I toggle up my text, it has transform just like everything else. And if I toggle my opacity, that's going to adjust everything as a whole. But in here, with my second animator, this opacity only adjusts things that are within this range. whatever time and whatever state this range is at. So when I start off, I have almost my entire range selected from 6% all the way to 100%. So I have 94% selected, right? So it's at the beginning right here all the way to the end. Now what I'm doing is moving the start, my start selector or start range head, just over to the very end. So does that make sense what I did? I know it's a little confusing. I obviously got myself confused, but you're just trying to work almost backwards. It is kind of reversing Abraham, but it's not in the kind of typical way that After Effects kind of reverses things. What After Effects would do to reverse whenever I do that, like hit that keyframe assistance and time reverse, if this was 100% and this was 4%, it would change it to this one being 4 and this one being 100. That makes sense? And what I actually wanted to do was not adjust the end, I wanted to adjust the start. So this can get really confusing really fast. And that's why we have gone through and kind of worked with keyframing, just kind of basic shapes and things like that first. That way you can get comfortable with keyframing, because keyframing is part of what makes some of this stuff so confusing. Once you have, 12 different properties all being keyframed independently, it can be really hectic and confusing, but just try to work modularly and one component at a time. So again, now that I'm going through here, it's highlighting everything as I go, as it's highlighted afterwards. But this is actually two separate effects happening at once, or two separate animators happening at once within this text. You guys any questions about that so far? Again, I know this is kind of maybe a little confusing, but it's just a matter of the more you jump in here and start playing around, the more you'll kind of get used to what After Effects expects and how it kind of works together. And another thing I can do is just toggle off these eyeballs, and now I have those keyframes still in place, but I just turned off that effect. Another thing you can do, just like I added that dissolve earlier in my effects and presets, what you can do, and there is another option for effects that are more text oriented. It's called text right here. Now, I don't have many, it seems. Strange. If you go to, let's see, I believe it's animation and browse presets. Hopefully this will work. What will happen is you'll open up Bridge. There we go. I'm going to close that. If you have Bridge downloaded, and you don't need to do this, it's not necessary, but it kind of helps. And if you, so this is going to open up all your kind of different effects and things. I'm going to click text. And then if you look in here, you'll have several different kind of texts and things like that. I'm going to go to, let's see, animate in. And now if I select on any of these, it will automatically play and tell me what this effect looks like. And so these are different kind of pre-made effects. And ooh, that's really classy right there. So let's see, I'll hit my check mark to apply. And let's see if it applied. And now, there we go. It has applied that effect. And that's just using Bridge. So Bridge is just a great way to see what you're adding on here before you actually add it on. It can just be kind of a pain. Whenever I tried to open it up earlier, it just kind of crashed on me. And it will add in that effect right wherever your playhead is. So my playhead was at 1 second and 19 frames, so that's where it plopped it in, and it will give you about a 2 second, I think, kind of start and finish. If I toggle down my text, let's see, where is that? I think it might be this one. Yep. Animator 4 and Animator 3. And so it just adds those things in as like 2 animators for my text. For some reason, these text effects should all show up within here in this text, but for some reason it doesn't seem like it. But so I'll go out to about 4 seconds. I'll show you that again. Again, animation, browse presets. And this only works if you have Bridge downloaded, Adobe Bridge, which it should be included in your Adobe Suite. Then go to text, and you can open up any kind of effects. And so, like I said, I think I added in the smooth move. Drop that down. Yeah, okay, 4 seconds. Let's see. Spin in by word. Ooh, that's kind of fun. Let's apply that one. So we'll hit apply, minimize. Let's see, did it work? Doesn't look like it. You can also double click right here. And then you'll see this is kind of like highlighted now and blinking. If I click into After Effects, there you go. I have a keyframe right here, kind of hard to see. One keyframe and another keyframe. So if I scrub through here, there we go. And this is Animator 4 now. And it just changes position and rotation. So a lot of these you can do by yourself, like without adding in these presets. But they're kind of nice and you can adjust them. So maybe I want this to start off stage. What I would do is go to my keyframe, my range selector. Where is it? In my start. Okay, there we go. So go to my start. I'm just going to drop my position down. Change my Y value. And there we go. So now we'll see what this looks like. There we go. So now I've got this little spinning thing. Let's see. I just want to double check. That's spinning by word. So I'm just going to go into my effects and presets and type that in just to see.
They're in animation presets. There's another text menu. It's a little
that's
complicated over there. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Abraham. Yeah. So I'm gonna. Oh shit. I'm just gonna double click on this and open it up in full screen ish. So right down here. Yes, Abraham is right. Animation presets and then in text. If I toggle that down, then you can see this will be all the folders that I was just kind of going through, and then animate in. There we go. And where is my spin in by word? Here we go. Spin in by word. Spin in by character. Smooth move in. That's the other one that I picked. So all of these things are available without using Bridge. They just look like this, and you can't really see a sample of what they look like beforehand. So using Bridge is helpful. I've never really fooled with it too much. Of course, I've never really kind of fooled with a lot of these presets like this, but Bridge is really helpful. And it took me maybe 2 minutes to download and install. So if you have space for it, I would highly recommend it just so you can see this stuff. And, go back to. Well, I'll get out of there and browse presets again. So this just shows me all of my animation presets right here. And these don't have to all be text. This can be transform type stuff. Separate XYZ position. Let's see, transition, different dissolve transitions. Different things like that. So it's a good way to get an idea of what something will look like. So these are different colorized things. Anyways, That's Bridge. Again, you don't have to use that. You can do it all within After Effects. Just go to your presets, animation presets, text, and then you can choose different things from here. Again, animate in. We have all these. Let's see. I'm going to get rid of these animators. All right, so this is just what I animated, right? Oh, that's right. I turned it off, didn't I? There we go. So now from here, I'll maybe go out to about 4 seconds. Let's see. We'll try fade up lines. I'll just drag and drop it right here. And then it's going to start right wherever my playhead is. It's going to create a new animator. And now if I play through here, wow, look at that. Pretty sweet fade in. And it's going to be 0 opacity until then. Maybe I want this. There you go. There we go. How about that? Isn't that something? So I'm getting this it's sticking right here with that S, and that would need to be fixed in Animator 1. But anyways, so that's kind of basics of working with text. You can animate this stuff further by going into your transform now. And so it's going to stay here, but maybe after it's all in, I want it to kind of move around. So here, I would maybe just select a position, select another position, keyframe, and pull it up. If I hold Shift, remember that you can kind of constrain different things. So push it up there. And just for some cleaner layer, I'll select those, right click, and easy ease. So now we'll see what this looks like. There and hit N, my play area, chicken nuggets. Zoom. There we go. So that's kind of basics of working with text. And let me kind of clean this up real quick. There we go. All right, 97. And then what I'm going to actually do is go 1 frame over and create a keyframe. It will be 100. So now we'll see what this looks like. Oh, there we go. So just to show you guys a little bit what I just did. So I noticed again that right here, this S was staying highlighted and scaled up. So I went 1 frame afterwards and just changed my start percent from 97 to 100. So that gets rid of my scale and fill color for this range in my animator. Does that make sense why I did that? I know this is a lot to cover, so I apologize in advance. Go through this video though after it's posted several times and just kind of try to follow along. And if you guys have questions, you can always send me an email. But these are just kind of the basics of working with text, and this is kind of what I wanted to show you guys for now. Get in here, play around with some of this stuff because there are a really great tool to kind of be able to go in and edit, individual text, line by line, word by word, letter by letter, character by character type stuff. So this will also come in handy whenever we start looking at masking, which will be shortly. And yeah, so it's all about like compiling things together in After Effects. So once you learn, several techniques, it's about putting them all together and making them work seamlessly. So this is text for now. We still got masking and the bone tool to look at today. I will give you guys maybe a 5-minute break. Go stretch your legs, take a break, rest your eyeballs, and we'll be back in 5.